Kyah was about 18 months and still crawling in a somewhat unusual fashion when we first really pursued it with the pediatrician to find out if there was cause for concern. We'd spent the first 18 months thinking we're just moving through the world with this perfectly happy, well-adjusted little human. And we didn't see her not crawling or walking according to some distinct plan as a problem. By the time Reach was in our house doing an evaluation, I think that we were aware that probably something was up, but ultimately hearing with clarity from this team that she would need services was a huge surprise and came with a ton of emotions. Really early on, I just asked, will she walk? When will she walk? And I remember receiving the answer, we don't know. And that was an incredibly hard thing to hear.
Well, Reach serves children from birth to age 3 who have a variety of risk factors or disabilities. And what we know is that the earlier you intervene, the better the child's chances of developing completely normally.
By 2 years old, she was walking. It was clear that Kyah was thriving under the kind of attention and care of the therapists we work with. We watched over a handful of months her develop more dexterity and more strength with her fingers, and more able to dress herself, maybe start a zipper. Kyah just turned 6 and is enrolled in kindergarten.
Next.
There is a discrepancy between her receptive understanding
Could be
Bucket?
and her ability to implement that information. Having a developmental delay doesn't mean that a child is not intelligent. Kyah has incredible emotional intelligence, academic intelligence.
While all of these kids have something that's going on, they also have strengths and they have abilities and they have characters which are part of who they are, and we want to help them to flourish and develop as individuals.
Our ServiceNet staff are a special group of people. It's more than a job. They're doing it because they care about people and they want to make a difference in the world.
We worked with Reach from 18 months to 3 years. On Kyah's 3rd birthday, the entire team who had ever worked with Kyah from Reach came to our house and wanted to have a proper farewell. And we weren't really prepared for the emotional goodbyes with the people who really had started us on this journey. The only regret I have in this entire journey is that it never dawned on us to pursue it earlier. Whenever I hear someone now talk about a concern they have of their child or student, I am going to be the first to say, don't hesitate to call Reach. I think about Reach as our family. I'm grateful for every bit of wisdom that they brought to our lives. We wouldn't be here today without them.
Justin's my oldest child, and was actually a daycare provider who came up and said, you know, there are things about your son which are not typical. He was diagnosed with pervasive developmental delay not otherwise specified. When Justin aged out of the school system, when he turned 22, my goal for Justin was to have a meaningful thing to do during the day. But some of the things that he was doing were not as meaningful for him. And so at the end of the day, he still had a lot of sort of nervous and not always very happy energy. He started going to ServiceNet and seeing a therapist there, and it was his therapist who suggested Prospect Meadow Farm as something that Justin could do.
Before the farm, I was working a few dead-end jobs just trying to make ends meet, and now I'm a professional farmer.
We grew up in a small town and there are farms all around us, and growing up, one of the things that children did was to just go and visit the farm, so going to visit the cows and sitting on the tractors.
And I've read a lot of books about farming. Well, I thought of working on one. Never had the opportunity until this came along.
We grow vegetables. We have over 1,500 shiitake mushroom logs, and we have hundreds of animals on the farm.
You drill a hole, you put in some mushroom spores, and you see them growing, and you pick them and you eat them. His passion is getting eggs from the chickens. Then those eggs are brought to market and people in the valley are eating them.
Yeah, I used to be afraid of the chickens.
Justin, as a little boy, it was difficult for him to go to the beach because he was afraid of the seagulls and he was afraid of getting pecked by the birds.
I just decided one day I'm gonna conquer my fear and just roll with it.
And to see him just walk in among, must be hundreds of chickens, and reaching under chickens and taking out the eggs, I would have never imagined.
We've actually seen the farm change people's lives. It's the connection to the soil and then the connections with the animals. Knowing that an animal needs you to bring them the feed every day, needs you to bring them the water.
I feel like everyone on the staff at Prospect Meadow Farms is willing to meet Justin where he is and help him develop the skills that he needs.
Here at ServiceNet, we do an individualized assessment of need for each person that comes to us. We build on people's strengths and try to help them get more in touch with ways in which they could move further ahead in their lives.
He just feels really fulfilled at the end of the day. He's been outside, he's been around nice people who treat him kindly, and because he feels better about himself, he's more fun to be around at home. He's calmer at home.
I think sometimes those of us who have regular jobs and who've always worked, we forget how important that is to our identity and to our sense of value, our sense of self-worth. The vocational services that we have on the farm are training people for real work.
I'm sorry, I got a little emotional. I'm just really happy. It was great. When I got my first paycheck, it was great.
In Justin's style, after we put the check in the bank, and he looked at me and said, "I'll take you out for dinner."
I'm not the most religious person, but I felt like I've been touched by God. Because I never thought I'd come this far, and look at me now.
When Justin says grace before dinner, he's been thankful for the food and he's been thankful for this job. And it's been a great thing for Justin, and it's just been a great thing for our whole family.
Nobody's life is perfect, and sometimes we don't have the ability to cope with it. When my mom passed away, I was 10 and I went to live with my dad and his family. I hadn't actually met this family until I was 10. Not being able to process that, not knowing how to, not like having help, it was just really, it was bad. My mom had suffered from Huntington's disease. I have it, and I kind of had this like subverse thing with myself where like if I had tested positive for the Huntington's disease, I would pretty much do everything in my power to make sure that I lived life to the fullest, whether I ended up dying or not. I started using pain pills in the beginning, which progressed into heroin. I became an IV drug user, and I was that for quite some time. If it wasn't for like the one friend that I had made, he said that we can go to the ER and find out about the detox. I took every opportunity that was given to me through finishing the detox, which at that point I got accepted to the Beacon House. Greenfield was a small town with one big intersection, but it was really welcoming coming in here.
For people going through recovery, having a place where they can be safe, where they're not subject to the outside world, and the peer support is incredibly valuable.
You had a bed, you had a pillow, and you had a blanket. You know, not only did you have that, but like you had other women who were familiar with what you were going through. That was probably the nicest feeling ever, to know that I was in an environment where I was safe. You get a foundation if you're willing to take all of the help given to you. And I remember mentioning that I needed something to do. And then all of a sudden, the peer outreach coordinator said, I have a man coming here to talk about this 5K event in light of all of the recent overdoses. And that day, you know, we had a conversation about how the Firebird would be an integral part of like being able to bring that education and awareness into this town. And I couldn't believe that I was being asked to help.
The race started because there wasn't really anything in town that brought everybody together, like firemen, residents. I started planning for the race, and I met Devin, and she wound up doing all the work pretty much.
I've never experienced a community like this, but I've also never been an active member of a community. The amount of help And the kindness that I received from this town is why I've chose to stay here and like continue to give back to my community.
So there's a common thread in all of the work really that we do here at ServiceNet, and that is to support each individual to reach independence. We're also bringing them to a point where they can make contributions themselves to society.
If I didn't have the Beacon House, if I didn't have a place to come and to rebuild my life, I wouldn't be able to be here and to share that with you. I didn't think that I would be able to make a difference. When you're in the depths of like figuring out yourself and what you're going to do with your life, nobody's really ever been there to help. And that's what I got here, was like somebody to say like it's okay, like you're exactly where you need to be right now.
Devin changed the way I look at addiction. I would say my life's better for knowing her, and she's taught me a lot.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that the Beacon House exists. I'm just really grateful.